Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's severe weather update. So another day and another day of dangerous severe weather, this time across the northern plains, where the Storm Prediction Center has issued an enhanced risk of severe weather across portions of eastern Wyoming, far southeastern Montana, central southwestern South Dakota, and central western Nebraska in the orange. We have a slight risk in the yellow surrounding that, extending into northeast Colorado, as well as portions of northwest Texas and southwest Oklahoma, and a marginal risk extending from the Big Bend of Texas all the way up through central Montana and southern North Dakota in the dark green. And looking at today's tornado threat, we have a 5% chance of tornadoes touching down within 25 miles of location across this brown area in eastern Wyoming, southwestern South Dakota, western Nebraska, and a 2% chance of tornadoes in the green today. So 5% chance we have Cheyenne, 2% chance we have Casper, Sherion, and Rapid City. So if you live in the green and especially brown areas today, make sure you're preparing for a few scattered tornadoes, as we've been seeing tornadoes over the last week and a half, some of which have been causing some very bad destruction. Looking at the damaging wind threat for today, we have a very significant damaging wind threat across northeast Wyoming, southern central South Dakota, central northern Nebraska, where we have a 30% chance of damaging straight line winds of 58 miles per hour stronger within 25 miles of a location in the red, including Rapid City, Pierre, and Valentine. And we also have a hatched area for the winds. So some of these wind gusts are going to be exceeding 75 miles per hour today across this hatched area. So make sure you're preparing for numerous damaging wind gusts today and several damaging winds of over 75 miles per hour today. And once again, I would not rule out a derecho today. We have a 15% chance of damaging straight line winds in the yellow areas today, including across Texas and Oklahoma, and a 5% chance of damaging winds in the brown. And looking at the large hail threat, once again have a destructive hail threat across eastern Wyoming, western South Dakota, western Nebraska, northeastern Colorado, far southeastern Montana, where we have a 30% chance of quarter-size hail or larger within 25 miles of a location in the red, a 15% chance in the yellow, also across the Texas Panhandle, and a 5% large hail risk in the brown, and in this hatched area from northeast Colorado to western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming, southeastern Montana, southwestern South Dakota. Some of these hailstones are going to be getting to golf ball, tennis ball, baseball, maybe even softball size today. We have the chance of seeing hail of 2 inches in diameter or larger in this black hatched area today, including Rapid City and Cheyenne. So make sure you're parking your cars in the garage, especially if you live in the red and hatched areas today. Now, timing out these storms, looking at the 12Z run of the HRRR model, storms are going to fire across southeastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming by 5 o'clock this afternoon, Central Daylight Time. And then as we go into about 6 Central Daylight Time, we're going to be starting to see large hail-producing storms across southeastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, and then some storms are going to break out across potentially the Nebraska-South Dakota border by 6 o'clock. And going into 7 o'clock, very strong, intense storms across northern Wyoming, southeastern Montana, could be producing gorilla hail going into 7 and 8 o'clock, supercells breaking out across western Nebraska and even down toward Kansas and the Texas Panhandle. We're going to also have a conditional threat of some supercells around 7, 8 o'clock this evening. Going into 9 o'clock, we start to see a line develop across northeast Wyoming, southeastern Montana, with several supercells across Nebraska, southern South Dakota, ongoing by 9 o'clock. Going into 10 o'clock, large hail producing storms could be all across southern South Dakota into central Nebraska, with our line moving into western South Dakota by around 11 o'clock Central Time this evening, and tons of hail producing storms by 11 p.m. this evening across south central South Dakota, north central Nebraska. So make sure you're really watching out for that hail threat this evening. As we go into midnight, 1 a.m., we're going to start to see all these storms converge into clusters, producing a destructive wind threat across Nebraska, South Dakota. Going into 2 and 3 a.m., this is where we could see the derecho threat across South Dakota and central northern Nebraska, as multiple clusters will converge into one cluster around 4 a.m. as it moves into eastern South Dakota, northeast Nebraska, western Minnesota potentially. And then as we go into 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, could be seeing damaging winds pushing across Iowa. So once again, we have a destructive severe weather threat today across the northern plains. So make sure you're preparing for scattered tornadoes, destructive winds, and destructive hail, especially if you live across eastern Wyoming, much of South Dakota, and Nebraska. Thanks for watching this morning's severe weather update. Stay safe and have a wonderful day, my friends.